You believe mental power is something you learn. It is not. It is something already shaping your life while you remain unaware. Every reaction you call choice may be a pattern repeating itself through you. Every desire you think is yours may be programmed, created, long before you noticed. Mental magic is not mystical. It is structural. And structure operates whether you understand it or not. In this video, you will see why most people never access real mental power, how thought becomes force, why intention alone changes nothing, and the hidden mechanism that decides your outcomes before action begins. This is not motivation. This is exposure, because once you see the structure, you cannot pretend you're free from it.
You believe mental magic begins when you decide to think differently. It does not. It begins in structures already operating before your awareness arrives. You assume thought is yours because it happens inside your mind. This assumption creates the illusion of ownership, but ownership is not origin. A thought appearing inside you does not prove you created it. It only proves you experienced it. Mental magic is not mystical power, it is structure. The Kybalion names this structure through the principle of mentalism. All is mental, not as poetry, but as mechanism. Reality is shaped through mental patterns that precede conscious decision. What you call intention is often only the final echo of a process already moving. Observe carefully. A reaction emerges before analysis. A preference forms without deliberation. An emotion arrives without permission. If the mind produces movement before you become aware of it, then awareness is not the starting point. Awareness is the observer arriving late. The first secret of mental magic is uncomfortable. Control is not where you think it is. You believe change begins with effort. You believe clarity begins with knowledge. Yet many learn endlessly and remain unchanged. Why? Because information does not alter structure. Structure determines interpretation long before meaning is assigned. Imagine a machine that processes everything you encounter. It filters events, assigns emotional weight, predicts outcomes, and decides relevance, all before conscious thought intervenes. You do not see the machine, you only see the results it produces. This machine is what most people call themselves. Mental magic begins when identity stops being assumed and starts being examined. The Kybalion does not ask you to believe in hidden forces. It asks you to recognize patterns. Thought is vibration in a structural sense, repetition creating stability. The mind repeats what feels familiar, not what is true. Repetition creates certainty. Certainty creates identity. Identity defends repetition. This is why most attempts at mental transformation fail. People attempt to change outcomes without changing patterns. They attempt to force new results using old structures. They attempt control from within the system that prevents change. Consider this image. A person standing inside a maze trying to redesign the maze while refusing to step back and see its shape. Every decision feels free, yet every path has already been defined. Movement exists, but direction remains constrained. Mental magic is not escaping the maze. It is recognizing that the maze exists. You were taught that stronger belief creates stronger results. But belief without structural awareness only strengthens existing patterns. The mind does not reward intensity, it reinforces consistency. What repeats becomes real, regardless of intention. Another illusion collapses here. You are not governed primarily by what you want. You are governed by what you unconsciously expect. Expectation shapes perception. Perception selects evidence. Evidence reinforces expectation. The loop closes without your participation. You call this personality. The deeper secret is this: identity is often a stabilized pattern rather than a chosen reality, and stabilized patterns resist disruption. Notice how discomfort appears when identity is questioned. Resistance arises immediately. The mind protects structure because structure maintains predictability. Predictability feels like safety. Safety feels like truth. But safety is not truth. It is familiarity. Mental magic begins when familiarity loses authority. The principle of mentalism suggests that reality unfolds through mental frameworks. This does not mean imagination controls the universe. It means interpretation shapes experience at a foundational level. Change the structure and perception reorganizes. Keep the structure and new information becomes decoration. Most people seek techniques. Techniques without structural awareness create temporary shifts followed by regression. The underlying mechanism reasserts itself. This is why effort alone exhausts. Ask yourself, how many times have you tried to think differently only to return to the same reactions? The failure is not lack of discipline, it is misidentification of the mechanism. You try to change the surface while the structure remains intact. Mental magic is not about adding power, it is about removing false assumptions about control. You believe you are directing thought, but what if thought is directing you? And if identity is the product of patterns rather than the source of them, what exactly is making your decisions right now? This is only the first fracture. Understanding has a cost, and the structure has only begun to reveal itself.
You believe mental magic works when you think positively. It does not. Positive thinking without structural alignment is only decoration placed over an unchanged mechanism. The second secret of mental magic is not about creating new thoughts. It is about seeing how thought becomes pattern and how pattern becomes reality experienced. The Kybalion presents the principle of mentalism not as a mystical claim, but as a structural law. Reality is interpreted through mental frameworks that operate continuously. These frameworks filter experience before conscious awareness begins. You do not see reality first, you see interpretation. Every moment passes through layers of expectation, memory, emotional conditioning, and subconscious pattern recognition. By the time you become aware of what you are perceiving, the process is already complete. This is why effort often feels ineffective. You attempt to change outcomes at the level of conscious decision while the underlying framework remains unchanged. Mental magic is not intention, it is structure. Consider another image. Imagine wearing colored lenses since birth. You believe you see the world as it is. You debate colors, you defend your perception, but you never question the lens itself. Mental structure functions like that lens. It determines what appears obvious and what remains invisible. Most people attempt to manifest change by focusing on outcomes. They visualize results. They repeat affirmations. They intensify desire. Yet desire operates inside existing frameworks. If the structure expects limitation, the mind unconsciously filters opportunities that contradict that expectation. You do not attract what you want. You reinforce what you already are structured to perceive. Thought leads to emotion. Emotion reinforces perception. Perception selects evidence. Evidence strengthens the original thought pattern. This loop creates stability. Stability becomes identity. Mental magic is simply the recognition of this loop, and recognition is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of randomness. Events begin to look less like chance and more like consequence.
Notice how certain experiences repeat across different contexts, similar conflicts, similar fears, similar results despite different circumstances. This repetition is not coincidence, it is pattern consistency expressing itself through new situations. The mind does not seek truth, it seeks coherence with its existing structure. This explains why contradictory information often fails to change belief. The mind rejects or reinterprets data that threatens structural stability. Change requires structural disruption, not intellectual agreement. Many teachings promise transformation through motivation or inspiration. Motivation creates temporary momentum. Inspiration creates temporary elevation, but neither alters the mechanism itself. Structure determines sustainability. Mental magic begins when attention shifts away from controlling external reality and toward observing internal patterns without interference. Observation reveals repetition. Repetition reveals structure. Structure reveals law. The Kybalion suggests that understanding mental law removes illusion, not because it gives power, but because it removes ignorance of mechanism. Another symbolic image. Imagine a river flowing beneath a frozen surface. On the surface, movement appears still. Beneath, currents move with force and direction. Conscious thought is the frozen surface. Subconscious structure is the current. Most people attempt to move the surface without ignoring the current, and when nothing changes, they assume failure. But failure is often accurate feedback about unseen structure. Mental magic is not about forcing new thoughts. It is about recognizing the patterns that generate thought automatically. When you begin to see patterns instead of isolated moments, something shifts. Responsibility increases, comfort decreases, randomness disappears. Because if patterns exist, then outcomes are not accidents. And if outcomes are not accidents, then your current reality may be the logical result of mechanisms you never examined. This creates resistance. The ego prefers mystery over mechanism because mystery protects identity from responsibility. But structure does not care about preference. You may believe you are choosing freely, but choice occurs inside boundaries defined by mental architecture. Expand the architecture and new choices appear. Keep it unchanged, and choice repeats within familiar limits. This leads to the next fracture. If your thoughts arise from patterns, if patterns determine perception, if perception shapes reality experienced, then is your will directing your life, or is your structure directing your will? And if the mechanism has been operating unnoticed this entire time, what else have you called yourself that is only pattern? The structure is becoming visible, and visibility removes excuses.
You believe awareness automatically creates change. It does not. Awareness reveals structure. Change only begins when structure loses invisibility. The third secret of mental magic is not power, it is consequence. Once the mechanism becomes visible, ignorance is no longer neutral. You cannot unknow what you see, and once seen, every repeated pattern becomes a decision, whether you admit it or not. The Kybalion does not promise freedom, it reveals law. Law does not negotiate with preference. Law produces results based on structure, not intention. Most people misunderstand mental discipline. They believe discipline means forcing different thoughts. This creates conflict between surface effort and deeper pattern. The surface exhausts itself while the structure remains unchanged. Mental magic begins when force stops being applied against symptoms and starts being directed toward structure. You were taught to control emotion, but emotion is feedback. You were taught to control behavior, but behavior is expression. The structure underneath continues generating both. Control without structural awareness becomes resistance. Resistance strengthens the pattern.
This is why many attempts at transformation increase frustration. Effort becomes another repetition of the same structure, trying harder within the same framework. Consider a symbolic image. A person pulls harder and harder against chains, believing strength will create freedom, but the chains are attached to mechanisms that tighten under tension. Every attempt to escape strengthens the restraint. The mind operates similarly. The more aggressively you attempt to suppress patterns without understanding them, the more stable they become. Mental magic is not suppression, it is recognition. Recognition interrupts automatic continuity. The moment a pattern becomes fully visible, it loses some of its unconscious authority, not because you defeat it, but because you remove its invisibility. Visibility alters relationship. Relationship alters response. Response alters outcome. This is structure, not inspiration. The principle of mentalism implies that reality experienced reflects mental structure, but this does not mean imagination controls events like fantasy. It means interpretation organizes experience in ways that reinforce internal patterns. You do not simply experience the world, you experience your structured interpretation of it, and interpretation creates consistent outcomes over time. This leads to a disturbing realization. Your identity may not be the origin of your life. It may be the result of repeating structures that stabilized long ago. Identity feels permanent because repetition feels natural, but natural is only familiar. Mental magic reveals the difference between awareness and identification. Awareness observes patterns. Identification becomes the pattern. Most people identify with reaction. They say, "This is who I am." They defend consistency as authenticity, but consistency is often just stabilized repetition. When identity loosens, structure becomes adjustable, but adjustment creates instability. Instability feels unsafe. The mind prefers predictable limitation over unpredictable expansion. This is why many retreat just as awareness increases. The loss of certainty feels like loss of self. And here the deeper law emerges. You are not trapped by reality. You are stabilized by structure. Mental magic is the gradual destabilization of unconscious structure until conscious architecture becomes possible. This is not comfortable, because responsibility increases as visibility increases. Once you see patterns, you can no longer blame randomness. Once you see loops, you can no longer pretend outcomes are accidental. Once you see structure, every repeated reaction becomes participation, and participation creates consequence. Another symbolic image, a mirror that shows not your face, but your patterns moving behind you. At first, you deny it. Then you recognize repetition. Then you realize the mirror is not judging, it is revealing. Mental magic is the moment you stop arguing with the mirror. The Kybalion does not offer escape from law, it offers recognition of it. Recognition changes the position from which you act, and position determines perception. But here is the final fracture. Many people believe understanding equals transformation. It does not. Understanding removes excuses, and without excuses, every unconscious repetition becomes a silent choice. If structure governs experience, if patterns govern perception, if perception governs action, then ignoring the mechanism is not neutrality, it is participation. Understanding has a cost, and law continues whether you accept it or not.
You believe the final secret of mental magic is control. It is not. It is recognition followed by structural responsibility. Most people search for the moment when everything becomes easy. They imagine that once the mechanism is understood, effort disappears and life aligns naturally. This expectation is another illusion produced by the same structure seeking comfort. Mental magic does not remove difficulty, it removes ignorance,
and ignorance was protecting you from responsibility. Once structure becomes visible, neutrality disappears. You cannot unknow patterns once they reveal themselves. Every reaction you repeat after recognition becomes participation rather than accident. This is the irreversible threshold. The Kybalion implies that understanding mental law changes position, not circumstance. You begin to see cause before effect. You begin to recognize patterns forming before they stabilize. But recognition alone does not alter structure. Recognition only exposes where effort must be applied. Most people misunderstand effort. They believe effort means forcing change through willpower. But willpower applied without structural awareness creates internal conflict. Conflict creates resistance. Resistance strengthens the existing pattern. Structural effort is different. It is observation without immediate reaction. It is interruption without suppression. It is allowing the mechanism to reveal itself fully before attempting modification. Consider this symbolic image: a watchmaker examining a complex mechanism. He does not force the gears blindly. He observes movement, timing, and interaction before touching anything. Intervention without understanding would destroy the system. Most people attempt mental change by shaking the mechanism instead of studying its design. Mental magic begins when observation becomes precise enough to reveal repetition before it becomes complete. You notice the thought before it becomes emotion. You notice the emotion before it becomes behavior. You notice the behavior before it becomes identity reinforcement. This sequence changes everything, not because it gives control in the traditional sense, but because it introduces space between stimulus and automatic continuation. Space interrupts inevitability, and interruption reveals choice. But here is another fracture. Choice feels uncomfortable because it removes familiar identity. When patterns weaken, uncertainty increases. Many interpret this uncertainty as failure and return to old structures simply to regain stability. Stability is seductive. Predictability feels safer. Even limitation feels safer than structural ambiguity. This is why mental magic is rare, not because knowledge is hidden, but because structural responsibility is demanding. You cannot blame circumstance once pattern recognition becomes clear. You cannot blame others once your reactions become visible as mechanisms rather than personality. You cannot blame fate once cause and effect reveal consistency. And here the deeper law appears. Mental magic is not creating new reality. It is removing unconscious participation in existing patterns. The Kybalion describes law as neutral. Law does not reward intention. Law responds to structure. Structure stabilizes through repetition. Therefore, change requires sustained interruption of repetition until a new structure stabilizes. This process is slow. It lacks drama. It feels mechanical. And because it lacks emotional intensity, many abandon it before transformation becomes visible. They search for sensation instead of structure. They search for belief instead of observation. They search for magic instead of law. The final secret is simple but difficult to accept. Mental magic is not mystical power granted to a few. It is structural literacy denied by most because it removes comforting illusions about control. You are not powerless, but you are also not independent from law. And once you recognize the mechanism, the question is no longer whether change is possible. The question becomes whether you are willing to remain aware long enough for structure to reorganize. Because awareness sustained over time reshapes pattern. Pattern reshaped over time reshapes identity, and identity reshaped over time
reshapes experience. But understanding does not guarantee transformation. Understanding only removes the excuse of blindness. And once blindness disappears, every repetition becomes visible. Every visible repetition becomes responsibility, and responsibility has consequence. Understanding has a cost, and law continues whether you act or whether you refuse to act.